Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, and welcome to Night School. Let me straighten up my tie. You know, I don't normally wear ties and stuff, man, but today was a special occasion. I had an interview at Uncle Bobby's Coffee and Books, my bookstore in Philadelphia, with the great Eddie Glaude, Princeton professor and MSNBC political analyst. So make sure you check out his new book. It's called "We Are the Leaders That We've Been Waiting For." Or that we've been looking for. It's an amazing book. It is a special, very intellectually rigorous, thoughtful book that really speaks to the moment. But anyway, I got to hang out with Eddie Glaude for a couple of hours and talk to him because Eddie is always so fancy, because Eddie always looks so polished and together. And I usually look like I just fell off the couch. I decided today, and only today, I would wear a shirt, a suit, and a tie. So don't get used to this, y'all, but I had to do it. Anyway, welcome to Night School. Night School, for those who are here for the first time, is a nightly thing we do here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, Monday to Friday at 10:30 Eastern. Every single night, we talk about culture, we talk about politics, we talk about history, we talk about the biggest ideas and the most interesting ideas. It's not a podcast, it's not a TV show, it is a global classroom. And so every so often, and increasingly more often, I not only use this space to educate and to talk, I also use it to have conversations with other amazing and wonderful and brilliant people, and sometimes some jerks who I want to argue with. But I try not to do that too often. And tonight I am super excited to bring on one of my favorite streamers, one of my favorite political voices. He comes from the greatest state in the union.
The Keystone
State. Mike from PA is in the building. Welcome to Night School, my friend.
Wow, I'm really honored to be here. I'm really excited, and I really appreciate the kind words. You know, it's always interesting when you meet new people in the, I will say, alternative media space, especially on the left, and how, you know, it's always good to show solidarity with one another. So I'm really excited to be here and chat with you about all the latest and greatest.
There's so much to talk about. But before we get into the nitty gritty of the politics of the world, talk to me for a second about how you got into the space. How did you become Mike from PA? How did you become a well-known streamer? How did you become a voice in all this?
You know, my genealogy, I am from the greater Sam Cedar extended universe. I originally was a candidate for the state legislature right out of law school at the age of 29 in Pennsylvania, and that's how I got involved in politics. And I was kind of a viewer of the Sam Cedar Majority Report program, and then I started calling in my experience of the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016 and the immediate aftermath, how incompetent they were in the field operations, and I gave kind of an insider view as a political operative as I was at the time. And then, I got hired as a producer there in 2018, doing some fill-in work for one of the producers who was out. And I started to realize that maybe I had a unique experience, going to law school, being a political, candidate, doing, real organizing, camp. I had this expertise that really didn't exist online. And after I had that experience as a producer behind the scenes with Sam Cedar, I thought, why not just do a show myself? And so, in August of 2019, I jumped into creating content. I butted heads with a few of the people that you've butted heads with. And it's been a rocket ship from there for me. And, I've created this community over the years, a central committee on twitch.tv.
Talk to people about who the central committee is, because it's a
so basically this all, I'm the chairman of the central committee, let's just say this, but I have an incredible group of people that are around me that support us. And it was really named after them and the crew. Unfortunately, like many things, most central committees, I became the cult of personality, the main person. And, so that's kind of how it goes now. And we've had pretty much everyone is an honorary member once they come on the stream for the first time.
I love it. I love having we kind of have our own little family / cult following here. It's a very small cult, but we're growing. We're growing by the week. There was a long time where people thought that streaming, even before it was a thing, formally, was something that only the right could do. That people would love to sit around and listen to Rush Limbaugh talk all day. That people could absolutely take in just hours and hours of Glenn Beck or whoever, right? Ben Shapiro maybe, but that the left just couldn't do media. Why did we think that for so long?
I mean, I hate to give you the answer that I'm going to give for a lot of these questions, but it fundamentally comes back to capitalism and kind of constraining the conversation within a certain norms and expectations that are in line with capital continued to be in private hands. And I would say that, like, the Democratic Party is a perfect example. The Democratic Party exists to constrain the political possibilities of those of us who are on the left of the playing field. Like look at the situation in Gaza. Not to jump ahead immediately into the blood and guts, but Joe Biden is completely out of step with the people that vote Democratic in this country. They want a ceasefire. They do not want to support Benjamin Netanyahu's fascist government. They want to, see peace reign. They want to see actual, substantive negotiations, the recognition of a Palestinian state. You can go down the line, and Joe Biden doesn't agree with anything. So when we're talking about media, there's not going to be money for people like me, saying that we should break up the media corporations. Right. The media corporations are not interested in investing in that message. And so, in a kind of Chomsky-esque analysis, you can see that the corporations in our government believe it, because look at what's happening with TikTok, right? TikTok represents, media that normal people can access and voices that are filtered out by the mainstream can talk to people directly, and it starts changing perspectives, and people are like, oh, I've never heard this information before. And I've never seen the unfiltered, raw reality of American foreign policy, and I don't like it. And so the American government cooks up totally fake security concerns, privacy concerns that are not real, and decides to ban this platform. So I hope this answer isn't too circuitous, but it just basically...
No, you actually not only answered the question quite directly, I think, but you've given me two other things that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah. And so, like, that's, just to put a bow on it, it is basically, the reality is that left-wing politics is subversive in a substantially important way. It challenges the status quo, and the gatekeepers, the elites, have held the commanding heights of mass media for most of our history. So that's why, Rush Limbaugh is totally in line with Clear Channel or whatever. You know what I mean? His deregulatory message is completely in line with them. So the more he can pump out that bullshit, his anti-union, pro-corporate consolidation, neoliberal deregulation, that's music to their ears. But somebody like me telling the workers unionize now is not who these corporate, people want to invest in. So that's why we were filtered out. We were blocked. And then, of course, mainstream liberalism, as noticed by Biden, is boring and nobody likes it. And it's not. It's a fringe position if you talk to people. Like, Joe Biden is fringe if you actually go and look at his views. Like, they don't line up with any substantial population in this country.
I think that's right. Unfortunately, the two-party system has people locked into this belief that Trump, because he is an awful, awful person, because he is the devil incarnate in their minds, that Biden is the only alternative that will allow them to live lives of safety and dignity and freedom. So it becomes less about believing in Biden and more about not believing in any other possibilities, not allowing for any other possibilities. And that for me is kind of a scary moment. As somebody who works in the grassroots, who thinks about radical policy and radical issues, how do you think about, or how do you approach the 2024 election, where again people feel like democracy is on the line, and if they don't vote for Biden, the world's going to explode?
Yeah. Man, this is kind of like my personal political journey. as somebody who was a Democratic candidate, and then I saw how the sausage was made, and I didn't like the taste. And basically, Joe Biden represents everything corrupt and foul of the Democratic Party. He's like a pustule, which is representative of an infection. And while obviously, Donald Trump is death. So when you're talking about a weeping, soaring, oozing wound versus death, I guess you take the wound. But he will block progress in a significant way if he wins. That's what his goal was in 2020. That was kind of the whole purpose of his campaign, is the not Bernie, not change candidate. Nothing will fundamentally change. I don't believe any of the things about democracy or any of the others, hyperventilating, because they don't believe it themselves. And I mean that in the sense that if Donald Trump really represented treasonous fascism, then we shouldn't be meeting him with ballots. We should be meeting him with another B. Right. And there's no serious attempt to organize such a movement. So I don't believe, they're not really worried that their lives are on the line. I can tell you right now, if Nancy Pelosi thought that Joe Biden and her were going to end up in prison, they would be doing more than telling you to vote. Okay, they would be taking it a little bit more seriously. Maybe they're naive. Maybe they're stupid. Maybe Donald Trump really does represent fascism in a serious way. And I don't think you can totally discount that possibility.
I don't think you can. But what you're raising is also an important point. The thing that makes a lot of us anxious is not the belief that Donald Trump represents a radically different set of realities, or will usher in a radically different set of realities for everyday people, right? But that things like the Supreme Court or the federal court system, that the appointment of judges in those positions has already led to the erasure of, or the elimination of, certain rights. We're seeing affirmative action on the chopping block. We see Roe v. Wade gone. That these are not small things for the most vulnerable people, and that even if you only care about that, that's a good enough reason to hold your nose and vote for somebody who can beat Trump in November. What do you say to that?
I would say that it's not in contact with reality and who Joe Biden really is. Now, if Joe Biden was a dyed-in-the-wool court packer and was arguing for a radical reimagine, if he was FDR reincarnate and saying that these are old men and we need to expand the court and we need to ban gerrymandering and we need to consider constitutional reforms like changing the way the Senate works, and we're going to admit DC and Puerto Rico as a state. If he was like a ruthless Machiavellian operator who was going to realign the country and make it more democratic within the confines of the Constitution, then he would immediately have my vote. I would be behind him 100%. But that's the opposite of who Joe Biden is. Joe Biden represents the continual defeat of the Democratic Party. Take a look at this. I guess I'm one of the few people who wants to win, because I look at the way that Republicans gerrymander Florida and Texas, and I don't say the solution to that is for us not to gerrymander our states to show them the right way. The solution is to gerrymander our states to the maximum possible degree and get as many representatives out of California and New York, which they failed to do, and to actually seize power through the methods that the Republicans are using, so that they cry uncle. That they say, okay, this is obviously not, an effective and fair way to do things. We should have a rapprochement about fair elections, independent panels, etc. It's not to unilaterally disarm. And so Joe Biden represents the unilateral disarmament strat. He's the appeasement candidate.
Yes.
That, so you're telling me we got to fight Trump, but you're voting for the appeasement candidate. It doesn't make any sense. And can I give one example, and then I'll be quiet, I promise.
Please.
Let's take a look at the situation with the foreign aid program, the military industrial complex money for Ukraine, Taiwan, and the genocide in Gaza. A couple months ago, they were about to give Donald Trump's immigration policy to the Republicans, supposedly to induce them to vote for the foreign aid package, which they failed to do. Okay. They couldn't surrender. They tried to surrender to the Republicans on immigration, got nothing out of the negotiations and failed. But now suddenly they just passed the foreign policy stuff without any of Trump's immigration policy just now. So is Joe Biden an effective legislative negotiator? If so, doesn't this prove he's a complete moron? Or is he disingenuous and actually an enemy to those of us who believe in immigration reform because he was trying to enact far-right policy? That is that is the only choice. Either Joe Biden is completely incompetent or he is a wool in sheep's clothing. I don't think either answer is very satisfactory. And, you know, even if Joe Biden wins, there's no plan to win. Like, he's not going to pack the court. So the Supreme Court will remain 6-3, maybe 5-4, hyper right wing. And then the plan is to never lose a presidential election for decades, because as soon as you lose one, all the Republicans retire. And the next Republican president appoints 5 judges that are all 35. This is not a strategy.
So what does an effective strategy look like? Because there's still people who are going to say, look, if, you know, and I've been a Green Party member for decades now. You know, I voted for Jill Stein in Pennsylvania in 2016. There isn't a day that goes by that
I regret not joining you. I was a fool.
You voted.
I voted for HRC and Biden.
Wow. Okay.
And the reason why was basically just the empty Supreme Court seat. And right. There hasn't been a Democratic majority Supreme Court since 1969. So the entire, you know, my mom's entire life, basically, there has never been a Democratic controlled Supreme Court. Have you considered perhaps that maybe the strategies are not working if 60 years is a failure? But you know what I mean? Like, maybe we should be thinking about something else.
What if people like me had made different choices in Pennsylvania in particular, and Hillary Clinton does win? And she was, I mean, and again, I'm not vote shaming, and I'm certainly not blaming myself for her loss. She lost that election. She failed to address voters in the right states. She gave up on Black and brown voters. She thought that some of these states were in the bag, like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia. You know, she sort of, I think they
modify that one little bit. She was in Pennsylvania all the time, and she was all over Pennsylvania. She lost it. So I don't think if she had campaigned in Wisconsin, it would have flipped shit. Okay. She was unpopular and disliked. And the reason why she was nominated is because the entire institutional Democratic Party rigged the election. Not like rigged. They didn't put the ballots in the box. Although Iowa is a little suspect if you go back and look at it.
But they set her up. They set her up to be the nominee at Bernie's expense.
Exactly. Well, they selected her. They chased out all competition, just like Biden in 2024, because they know she can't handle it. And then they want to blame us. You engineered the defeat, not us. Right.
There's a thought. Again, if there's one more, if there's a Democrat in the White House in 2020 or 2016, excuse me, and Trump's not there, you know, we women still can get abortions everywhere.
Right? I mean, maybe. I mean, like, you know, you have to go back, and I hate to get into the weeds, but the Republicans controlled the Senate after 2016. So are you also going to start re-engineering a bunch of other elections and just, you know, at a certain point, you know, like, I don't know, man. It just seems like the Democratic Party failed pretty institutionally with the whole Hillary Clinton thing, and going back and doing magical Christmas land where I get to pick who I wanted to win when is infantile and baby talk. Like, the only thing you can do is go forward, you know, and come up with a new strategy, not be retroactively, I wish people had voted differently. Okay.
What does forward look like for you? Is there a Democratic candidate who could make you say, this is worth it? This is worth being connected to these schlubs. This is worth pulling that lever one more time. I mean, I you know, I'm already thinking about 2024, and it's very challenging for me. You know, again, I'm not feeling responsible per se for 2016, but I do have some real fears around Trump returning.
I mean, gosh, you know, I think the analogy that I used for my own mind is imagine you're in an airplane and it's diving toward the ground. And currently we're at a 90-degree angle toward the ground.
Oof.
That's very fast. The wings are about to pop off. You're going to be a lawn dart. It's bad news. Now, if the pilot gently pitches back and takes us to 60 degrees into the ground, we're still hitting at Mach 1 and we will not even, our teeth will be disintegrated. That's what Joe Biden represents. So the angle that we hit the ground is not, I mean, maybe marginally it could matter, but at the speed we're going, it's not going to make much of a difference. Like, for example, climate change is totally incoherent policy. Joe Biden just approved a massive oil export terminal that's supposed to be designed to export 2 million barrels of oil per day from America. America is now the #1 oil producer in the world. That is not...
It's wild.
That's not in line with human survival.
No.
Okay? And he's planning on slapping massive tariffs on Chinese solar panels China has invested hundreds of billions of dollars in the green transition. They're now the world's leading producer of EVs, lithium ion batteries, solar panels that are cheap. They are high quality. They work. And when we were importing Chinese crap and destroying the American industrial base for 30 years, it was fine. But the moment it was, we can use this and we can have a green energy transition, and China made the investments, we didn't. And we need that. We need those, every panel we can install on every roof to save the planet. Joe Biden is now slapping tariffs on it. That is not in alignment with effective public policy. If you really take these things seriously and not just use them as rhetorical lies to manipulate people, Joe Biden ain't it, man. And to answer your question, I'm very easy to please. Just show me rational, legitimate arguments that achieve the goal. And Joe Biden can't do it.
Did Bernie do that for you?
I think if you look at the Green New Deal as he laid it out, it absolutely did. Obviously there were some details that needed to be worked out, and obviously, it would have run into vicious opposition. But at least he had a plan that was kind of close to the mark.
Is there anybody on the Democratic bench? And I don't want to keep focused on Democrats, except that it's such an interesting moment where the standard bearers of the party are Joe Biden, who is a senior, not just a senior citizen, but, toward the end of his, let's just say his political life.
It's 50-50 he'll survive his next term, according to the Social Security actuarial tables. This is an old man.
He's an old man. He's an old man.
Yeah.
And even if he survives the campaign and he survives the next presidency, he's still not offering any vision or future for the party in terms of leadership. So he's gone. Hillary's out of the mix.
Lifts to God's ears.
Yeah, right. I know. You can never count them out completely. There's still a little house of cards in me that feels like we're going to end up with Hillary. But when you look at who's there, Gavin Newsom, maybe.
I mean, okay. If you want me to shit talk Gavin Newsom for entertainment value, I will.
I'd love that.
Basically, he is a used car salesman who could not get elected in any state but California. What I'm imagining, I've knocked like tens of thousands of doors in Pennsylvania, and I'm imagining the people that are the base of the Democratic Party, these retired steelworkers. He's a huckster. He's got that slick back hair. His wife left him for Donald Trump Jr. Like, that's not the energy that we need for the Democrat. You know what I mean? Nah, man, I can't see it. For me, if
maybe the heir apparent. I mean, he's doing some very interesting things. Like, for one, for example, debating Ron DeSantis, even though he's not running. Right.
Well, Ron DeSantis, I think that he's the Ron DeSantis of the Democratic Party, in the sense that there's a media fascination that there's no there. You know what I mean? He's a cheerleader for the party. He looks decent in that role, but as far as like
Bill Clinton without
a leader, no.
He's like Bill Clinton without the intellect.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at a moment, as my grandmother would say, half a loaf, beat none. Half a loaf is better than none. If Gavin Newsom, you got a younger guy, and young is relative, right? But you got a young, handsome, person with name recognition who has carried some water for the Democratic Party, do we see anyone else passing him? I mean, he's a governor of a major state, not a contested state like Florida, obviously, but a major state. I mean, Gavin Newsom, again, I think he's an empty suitor. In some ways, he also reminds me of Fred Thompson back in the day. Who everyone thought, remember, everyone insisted Fred Thompson was just going to be the guy, and there was no, Fred Thompson was the secret weapon of the Republican Party to win. I mean, he was on Law and Order. He was a senator. He had all the things. Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to be president. He had no desire to be president. You could tell from his campaign. But Gavin Newsom wants to be president. Gavin Newsom desperately wants to be president. And other than Kamala Harris, who I think does not have a legitimate shot at a nomination or a presidency, unless no shot. Just,
she's not built for it, which, like, I feel bad for her because, like, obviously a lot of people put a lot of, like, stock into her, and she sounds good on paper to a lot of people, not to me, but to a lot of other people. I tend not to like to vote for prosecutors, I
ain't trying to vote for
I'm not trying to vote for any prosecutor, but she just doesn't have a good time out there. You can tell she's feeling a lot of anxiety and stress. And I don't think president is going to line up with her. As far as, like, okay, if you want me to be honest, like, there's two things that for those of us on the left, we either want somebody who is of us, or we want somebody who doesn't punch left. And so that is your for me, who's the candidate that I want? The candidate I want is somebody who has the intellectual fortitude and to not bow down to every Republican bullshit talking point and to actually push back. And I do think that, like, under the rules of the game we have now, I would like, I don't even like picking any of these scum because they really do suck. But I would probably go with, like, maybe J.B. Pritzker, because at least he cracked heads and gerrymandered, Illinois. That's the basics for me. Are you trying to make the Democratic Party win by any means necessary? Do you have he's done a lot of things, like, where I don't feel like he has stabbed knives in the back of the left as ruthlessly as he could have. And obviously he's a billionaire, and I'm not trying to get a billionaire in charge, but, if somebody is willing to fold to pressure, or somebody who's looking more at history as opposed to their greedy, grubby self-interest, maybe he could rise to the moment. And I do think, America, he's looks more like the average American. And
Americans don't want to elect the average American. No,
I think they do. I think they do, actually, in the sense that they want somebody who is authentic, not necessarily one of them, but somebody who's authentically that. And I think he has a kind of an ease with the way.
I think that's right. But I think there's a part of them that also wants a matinee idol, And I wonder if Gavin Newsom represents that. I mean, he's jumping through the right hoops. On October 7th, he said he flew to Israel to be with the Israeli people.
That's what I don't want. That's what I don't want.
I'm not advocating it. I'm not asking, is he a good candidate?
He wants it. You can smell it. He wants it. Yeah.
But will he get it? I'm saying I think he may be the next big thing on the Democratic scene. Gavin Newsom, to me, I agree with you. He feels like a huckster. Whenever he talks, I feel like I'm about to lose some clothing or some money. Like he is that kind of huckster, pimpish kind of vibe.
He's the guy who's trying to walk out of your house with your wife's panties in his back pocket. Like, this guy is not. He's not. Like, if you trust him, honestly, you get what you deserve. At a certain point. And I feel the same way about Trump, right? Like, if you fall for that, then at a certain point, like, you deserve it, man. Like, how many people did he have to rip off before before you're like, but I'm special. And yeah.
Well, let's talk about somebody else while I have you here, because I can't stop thinking, since we're talking about I won't say hucksters. Maybe I will. Let's talk about John Fetterman.
I have John Fetterman. I despise with every fiber of my being because I've known him for years, and he's a complete liar, and he's a total fraud, and he is a betrayer. There's really no other word for it.
For the audience, I mean, obviously, people should know because he's a senator. He's on the national scene. We have a special attachment and maybe affection for him or hatred for him, depending on how you feel. because he's from our home state of Pennsylvania. But John Fetterman, of course, ran a very competitive and compelling Senate race in 2022, where he became the U.S. junior senator out of Pennsylvania. He defeated, was that Mehmet Oz?
Mehmet Oz, yeah, Dr. Oz. But he also, you know, can I say, you know, go ahead and keep giving your background. I'm sorry, I'm chomping at the bit for this one.
It's just John Fetterman ran as a progressive candidate. He ran as a working class candidate,
pro-union, left-wing,
pro-union candidate,
pro-immigration reform,
pro-immigration. I mean,
pro-legalizing magic mushrooms,
all the things, right?
Okay, so I've known John. So, you know, when he ran in 2016, I was, you know, when I ran for state leg.
Actually, Mike, let me say one more thing. The reason why we're talking about him, y'all, is because Fetterman has, since being elected, moved so far to the center and really to the right that calling him a centrist would be generous. And when he was asked about some of the political choices he made, he literally said, I'm not going to be a progressive candidate. And he said it with a kind of disdain or disgust, as if the voters had an unrealistic expectation. We had to literally pull out the receipts and say, look, we didn't assign this title of progressive to you. You literally ran on a progressive campaign. You said you were going to be our progressive candidate. That's why we accepted you going to, you know, debates with hoodies on. You know, you look more like security force at the club, but we allowed it because you were going to be one of us. And the moment he got into office, the economic policy shifts, the national security policy shifts. And as you just saw from that image I put up, and I'll put it up again, he has been more Zionist than Netanyahu in the last 6 months. I mean, every opportunity he calls for more militarization, you know, more repression against Palestinian people. And he also has stood up against the students at Columbia University as they are being criminalized and militarized and oppressed and railroaded on campus for protesting. So John Fetterman has completely done
it's far worse than you understand. Because as I said, you know, I've known him basically since 2017 or so. You know, you know, he ran as kind of the Bernie aligned candidate in the 2016 presidential nomination contest in Pennsylvania's Senate race. He was the like out of nowhere candidate who grabbed a bunch of Bernie supporters, you know, ran on Medicare for all, you know, supported Bernie's substantive platform. You know, he was this progressive mayor of a small Pennsylvania town. And he kind of, and his wife was a dreamer and is a dreamer. Like she is an illegal immigrant, and he, you know, she's only here legally because of first the dream and then his marriage, you know, but other than that, she's an illegal, right. And, according to him, I'm sorry, you know, I don't use those terms. I'm just saying, I want to double underline this guy. So then, you know, I became aware of him because he decided he was going to take that fame he got from his out of nowhere finish and run to primary from the left, the sitting Pennsylvania lieutenant governor. Now, Pennsylvania, I'm going into the weeds because I hate this guy and I know him more than anybody.
Please do.
So I helped support his primary of this sitting Pennsylvania, you know, lieutenant governor. And the way Pennsylvania works is kind of weird, is that the lieutenant governor and the governor run as a ticket in the general election, but they run separately in the primary. Like the governor doesn't pick his lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania. The voters pick, the primary voters pick the governor and the lieutenant governor. So he primaries the sitting lieutenant governor from the left. He wins on this like pro-trans rights, pro-marijuana legalization. He's going to visit every county in Pennsylvania to argue in favor of marijuana legalization. You know, just so you understand that he was working, you know, I had a candidate who supported single payer, wanted to do a pilot program in Pennsylvania for single payer. He gave us $2,000, you know, like he was supporting all the left-wing candidates. He was running from the left. He won from the left. And so he got into the lieutenant governor's mansion. He was extremely in favor of pardons and paroles as lieutenant governor. So he showed his bona fides. He was flying a trans flag from the Pennsylvania Capitol Rotunda. He was, you know, imagine, instead of doing the annoying shit with the Israeli flag, he was doing annoying shit with the trans flag and dunking on Republicans.
Right. Right.
And he was supporting all the left-wing policies. And by the way, in that 2018 election, he took Bernie Sanders' endorsement. He launched his campaign from Philadelphia with Bernie Sanders as his endorsee. Okay, I want you to be very clear that he ran as a creature and as a person of the left.
Unequivocally.
If you go back to his campaign videos, he has a video on immigration where he says immigration is our strength. He has a person with spread out a Muslim prayer rug and pray toward Mecca as part of his campaign ad on immigration. Okay, he couldn't have signaled any more to the left. Okay, it's as simple as that. And what happened is there was a bunch of things that happened in the 2020, 2018, 2022 races with DMFI, which is Democratic Majority for Israel. They started pumping a lot of money into anti-Bernie shit. They ran an ad in Iowa after Bernie Sanders had like that heart attack. They ran an anti-heart attack ad against Bernie. And now Joe Biden has had 2 brain aneurysms, folks.
Yeah.
Was there a brain aneurysm ad? I didn't see the brain aneurysm ad. So these are the scum of the earth. These are the worst people on the planet. These AIPAC monsters. And they ended up defeating Nina Turner in a race in Ohio, basically by running ads nonstop of hers, because she had said voting for Joe Biden was like eating half a bowl of shit, or voting for Donald Trump is like eating a full bowl of shit. And they were basically just running that on repeat. She's not a real Democrat. She hates Joe Biden. She's going to undermine him against the Republicans. Blah, 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 blah. Not a team player. And the people who voted Democratic primaries are people who are really strongly emotionally attached to the Democratic Party. So that's not good for you if somebody has that angle. And they spent $5-10 million and they got her. They beat her barely, but they did it. Oh, did I lose you?
No, it's me. So
okay.
Let's answer.
Sorry for this long thing, but I just get into it. But I think basically he sold out because he was scared and he's a pussy.
So that was actually where I was going next. The question is he a con man, or is he just a coward, or is he an idiot, or is he a useful idiot?
He's both. Okay. And he's both. Like at this point, it's one thing if he had just supported Israel like every other Democratic senator and just been quiet about it and kind of had shitty votes, but not draw attention to himself. But he drew attention to himself basically as a way of smearing our faces in it. You know what I mean? Of like, you trusted me, you believed I was a progressive, you fucking loser. And that kind of maneuver is intentional. That is I want that corporate money. I want that AIPAC money. I am not on the left anymore. I know I got here on the left, but I'm here to make up. I'm here to sell out.
Well, it seems
it's the same. It's a Kirsten Cinema playbook. I got fooled. It's okay. I got fooled. A lot of us got fooled, but don't be confused.
Well, listen to this. At least 14, according to The Intercept and some investigative journalism here, his campaign is attracting new Republican donors since October 7th, since he is, as you pointed out, stood so steadfastly with the Jewish ethno-state of Israel. He has received lots of support. It says at least 14 registered Republicans have contributed to Fetterman's campaign since October, according to filings with the Federal Election Commission. A 15th donor listed as a registered Republican told The Intercept he recently switched his party registration to Democrat to vote for George Latimer in the Democratic Party against Representative Jamal Bowman. 3 of the donors gave to Fetterman's last campaign for Senate. The reason I'm bringing this up is, one, to sort of underscore your point here, which is that Fetterman he knows what them dollars at, and he recognizes that he can get a lot of support, and it may make him unbeatable, because if he is moderate on some serious issues in Pennsylvania, and takes a super hard hawkish stance on Israel, I mean, is he easier to beat than Arlen Specter? Is he harder to beat?
Here's what I would say. I would say that there is no triangulation you can do to make yourself immune to the waves of the way that voting now works, which is politics is international. There's no, I'm a right wing on Israel and I'm going to get a bunch of Republican votes. But Republicans will use you like the useful idiot that you are during your term. They'll give you money because, by the way, just giving you money now, okay, they're billionaires. Who gives a f about 20 grand?
Yeah,
right?
but
You give them 20 grand now.
Well funded, but Mike, if he's well funded,
look at Kirsten Sinema. That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't. She ran out of the road, ran out on a rail because she betrayed the Democratic Party in front of the Democratic Party. She got all the blame, and she was very well funded, but she's not even contesting it because she's so unpopular. So the money, listen, if I believed the money was the only thing, then I wouldn't be doing this because we would never win. I do think it can help on the margins and it can move numbers quite a bit, but I don't think it's enough to rescue you from, the realities of politics. And, you piss off enough people, even if you're well funded, you will lose. And his personality is not good enough to be punching left in Pennsylvania.
I hope you're right. I worry that in a place like Arizona, the calculations are a little different given the demographics. But here, it's going to be a dogfight I use that it will be a rigorous battle every time. And, and if there are, and again, the whole sky is falling narrative that Democrats use will make most Democrats pull the lever for a Democrat because he's a Democrat. But if you got significant Republican money pumping in, one, you may not get the type of Republican opposition that you're going to see dedicated toward getting rid of the squad in the House. But also, he's just going to get some people who are hawkish on foreign policy to say, you know what, I like that Fetterman guy. I'm a moderate, but I like that Fetterman guy.
I think my experience with Pennsylvania voters is Israel is not what they're voting for. It isn't, many of them. I mean, there are populations of people that have every issue is their number one issue, right? But overall, I don't think it's something that wins you a ton of votes. I mean, even if you look at the polls, like there's a large percentage of Republicans, maybe not a majority, but like a significant chunk, like 40%, that want to withdraw from funding Israel at all. So the question is, are we moving people in your column, or are you kind of pissing off the people that were your biggest supporters and I feel like for John Fetterman, the Republicans are going to run you a serious challenge against him every time anyway, because what's better than having a centrist moderate Democrat who betrays the left in office? A Republican,
right?
So all the people that are donating to him now to influence his behavior, which is bribery, they're going to happily they'll max out to the Republican who challenges them. So I don't know. I think of John Fetterman as probably the single most disappointing person in my entire political career. I legitimately thought that he had a strong, like before the stroke anyway, I thought he had a strong possibility of being a presidential contender.
Really?
Yeah, I did, because I had known him. Like he was actually he was a decent speaker, and he knew how to link up progressive people with like more ancestral Democrats. He had a way of appealing to a certain type of demographic that has not supported, wasn't very strong supporters of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, but a lot of them were interested in him. And you can see that if you go and look at like the way the numbers turned out. He performed quite well, actually. It was the only flip for the Democrats that that was a good campaign for him. He did well. So, but now he kind of like he punched left in a really obnoxious way, and he kind of like offended a lot of people like me. Like, his wife follows me on Twitter, for fuck's sake. Like I could drop a DM right now and say,
she hasn't blocked you or
no, I shit on him all the time. Well, she knows me in person. I was her body man.
Is she ashamed of him? Is she embarrassed?
I've been pondering. I've written so many DMs and deleted them, because I was her body. Let me tell you this one little story. I was a body man for her. We went to a Syrian club in Allentown, Pennsylvania. This was when like Syrians were coming into the country because of the conflict. And I was there, as she was like kind of talking about her experience as an immigrant, as a refugee. Do you understand how much he has betrayed utterly all those people, and that was his wife, and she was not fake. You know, she ran a free store in Braddock, Pennsylvania, which was like you could come in and just take whatever. Like, it is mind-boggling how John Fetterman has utterly betrayed. I mean, it really was betrayal. It wasn't just like, oh, all politicians. No, this was like a very personal, very intentional, malicious mask off moment. Like, ha 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 ha, I tricked all these people. I was faking it all along. It is wild. Sociopath shit. Oh, wait, I lost you again.
It's me. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay.
New fingers today. So let's talk a little bit about Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is facing what will be a very tight race. What could certainly be a photo finish in November against Donald Trump.
He's the underdog now.
He's the underdog, in fact. He has to be probably hoping that these court cases play out in ways that keep Donald Trump wrapped up, maybe even locked up. But
no shot.
I don't think it's going to play out the way he wants it to, right?
There is 6 conservative Supreme Court judges. They will conjure from their ass a legal doctrine to protect the Republican presidential nominee. They stole an election for one already.
Yeah.
They're not going to allow some rinky-dink bullshit charges about documents, whether it's at New York State court or federal court, to put Donald Trump in any kind of real legal. And they're not going to finish these. And my listen, I'm not practicing, but based on my own belief in the trajectory of these court cases is not going to result in remanding him to prison anytime soon. Okay.
So no, let's assume that you're. It's
not going to save us.
Let's assume you're right, and I think you are. And Joe Biden is in these nail biters all around the country. The nail biter is going to happen in Michigan. There's going to be a nail biter in Virginia. There's going to be a nail biter in Ohio. There might be a nail biter in Wisconsin. There'll be a nail biter in Pennsylvania. And one of the things that may come back to bite him is Joe Biden's handling of Gaza. Now, historically, U.S. presidents have been wise from a strategic perspective, not an ethical perspective, but from a strategic perspective, it has been wise to echo the same claim, which is that Israel is our closest and tightest ally. There will never be an inch of daylight between us and Israel. God bless America and Israel and no place else, or whatever it takes, they've been willing to do. But this seems to be maybe the first election where standing uncritically next to Israel, we're doing Israel's political bidding, vetoing the bid for statehood of Palestine in the UN Security Council, vetoing ceasefire resolutions repeatedly as a permanent member state, not endorsing the ICJ's very clear and principled response to South Africa's case of genocide in the court. All of these things, the failure to speak up and speak out against genocide, the failure to draw a clear red line for Netanyahu, the best they could do is abstain on one vote and continue to send these stupid press leaks about how Biden's really pissed at Netanyahu, right? As he continues to do the same thing. And
weak, feckless loser.
All true. But in Biden's mind, I believe he's saying, well, this is what every other U.S. president has done. And not a single U.S. president has ever lost an election by standing next to Israel. Will this be the first time that he's wrong?
Whenever we draw these grand narratives about elections and we point to one or various issues, I feel like we are kind of storytelling. We're kind of telling ourselves bedtime stories, and we're trying to grab a hold of a dangerous, chaotic world. I will say this. I have been pushing for Muslim political engagement my entire career. I was at the first ever M-Gage fundraiser, which is a group that's trying to create a constituency for Muslim Americans and Arab Americans, because they have been oppressed by our government since 9/11. It's been a difficult time to be a Muslim in America. And so I've been behind this community 100% since the beginning of my career. And let me just say that I think in Michigan and Pennsylvania and a few other places, it is an absolutely disastrous mistake. It has made Michigan probably from one of the safest blue states to, I would say Donald Trump is a big favorite in Michigan at this point. And that's the ball game, because he's doing very well in Nevada. Nevada has been trending Republican kind of gently. It's stayed Democratic, but it's been kind of the Republican growth state. I think it's disastrous for Joe Biden. It's a state that's very sensitive to inflation. Arizona has seemed to spring back. I mean, there are some really bad candidates in the abortion thing. Maybe, he can gut out Arizona. But if he's behind in Nevada, he's behind in Arizona, he's behind in Georgia.
Yeah.
That's 268 for Trump. So that means any electoral vote is a win for Trump, because at a tie, Donald Trump will win because of the way the tiebreaker works. Right. The Republican nominee will be the president at 269. So Donald Trump is like pretty much almost there already.
Right now, if things stay the same.
If they stay the same. And honestly, it feels like I think a lot of people are coping with the idea that things are going to get better. But I don't know about you, but I'm looking at Berkeley. I'm looking at Columbia. I'm looking at NYU. I'm looking at colleges and universities around the country. Mm-hmm. And young people are seeing babies being blown apart. Not made up babies. Real babies.
Right.
Real children. They're seeing foosball tables get drone striked. They're seeing 4 boys get murdered double tapped live on a leaked drone video. They're seeing 18 children get bombed. They're seeing starvation. They're seeing all this evidence that exists, but people just don't see it when they get the elite filter, the APAC filter that you talked about.
So
I'm rambling a bit, but basically my point is, yes, this is going to be the election because it is so close that you can't do this to your base.
Why
you can't?
Why is that so hard for Joe Biden to wrap his mind around? Is it just is it like when Obama was running and a lot of people like me were like, white men are undefeated, like until one loses an election to a black guy, I got to see it, like, is it one of those things like, look, Israel's undefeated. I'm not letting go of Israel until someone loses an election. Is that Biden's logic here, that he's just going to stubbornly hold on longer? Because all the evidence, I mean, the votes in Michigan, or the non-votes in Michigan, but the campaign to literally say, hey, we're uncommitted. And Pennsylvania is now starting an uncommitted movement.
Yeah, make sure you write it. I think they're trying to do a write-in, right?
Yeah,
I was contacted about this, and I needed to. The days are just burning by. I need to get my shit together on that. But yeah, no, I mean,
like, the signs are there. So is this a bad strategy? Is this stubbornness? Is this like blinders? Is this like his team is giving him bad advice? How do you arrive at a place where you see a very clear loser? I'm talking about an issue that's a loser. And
Joe Biden is not. I mean, like I think just to put myself in Joe Biden's shoes for a second. Joe Biden is a man who is fundamentally a mediocre, lucky, privileged bastard who knows he's inferior, who knows he's an imposter, who knows he doesn't deserve to be where he is, who got in the Senate at 29 off of a fluke, who was, bottom of his law school class. He's kind of the Democratic.
He wasn't the top of his class, straight A's, like he told us decades ago.
No. He is really the Democratic response to Trump. He's kind of like a Democratic Trump in a lot of ways.
That's harsh. That's harsh.
Well, I mean, listen, I know a lot, so I hate him more. And I sometimes talk on my stream how he was so close with some of the last segregationists that were in the Senate, some of the last Dixiecrats. Yes. The way, like Delaware itself is kind of a state with a lot of racial baggage, and he was 100% on the side of the racists. Okay, and You know, that's been his whole career, as being a racist, being a bigot, making aid and comfort for that, or serving the interests of things like, so, you know, credit card companies, and making student loans non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, and, you know, the mass incarceration, you name it, really. You know, Joe Biden was the author or a major supporter of every major error in the post-civil rights era of politics. He is dog shit. He is the worst person possible to be president right now. And, you know, there's this story. This long ramble has a point, I promise. There was a story where he was on a phone call with an Israeli prime minister during their incursion to Lebanon, it wasn't Lebanon, right? They were into Beirut, and there was women and children dead. And Joe Biden was like, "Don't care, kill who you need to kill. I would kill women and children. Kill who you need to kill." And the Israeli prime minister, who was a liberal Zionist at the time, was like, "What?" And I had to kind of tell him to calm down. So I think Joe Biden knowingly supports what amounts to ethnic cleansing of Gaza, and has absolutely no interest whatsoever in what his voters believe or think. And he comes from an era
why this connection to Gaza? Again, he says every chance he gets that he's a Zionist, and that he's a proud Zionist, even though he's not a Jew. He says that's his language. He says, "I'm not a Jew, but I am a Zionist." He says, you know, "I believe in Israel." He said, even if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create one. All the same talking points. He's pissed at that. He has to see Netanyahu.
You're pissing me off just thinking about it.
Right. So, like, is this religious fanaticism? Is this political orthodoxy? What makes a Joe Biden this Zionist and this sort of have this level of allegiance to Zionist values?
I mean, you know, hey, you're giving me permission. You're giving me permission to shit talk people. So this is my bread and butter. Basically, I think of Joe Biden as kind of a mediocre, slick. You know, was his dad a car salesman? I don't know. I think he was. Maybe I'm just inventing this in my own mind. But basically, AIPAC money. You know, oh God, I have a story. Oh, yes, from my own political career that, you know, listen, if you're in Pennsylvania politics, really into Pennsylvania politics, you will see corrupt shit, like actually corrupt, illegal shit all the time.
Oh, tell me a story. Like what?
So there was this one candidate who ended up in federal prison that I know. And he was considering running for Senate. And he basically said, if you promise to be with Israel no matter what, a bundler will arrive with a package of cash. I just think Joe Biden is a mediocre, bottom tier senator, and he's just been taking that AIPAC money for decades. And for him, you know, saying you support Israel is easy, and that's where you get the money. That's what smart politicians do. He doesn't even bother considering it. Who are the Palestinians? They have nothing. They don't have a lobby.
He believes in this at all.
You know, with Joe Biden, I don't think he really believes in anything but Joe Biden. You know, I don't ascribe to him much in the way of intellect. I think he's kind of as I said before, bottom tier. He was rescued from obscurity by Obama because he wanted an old white man to stand next to, so people wouldn't be as scared.
He was the perfect compliment to Obama.
Yeah. I mean, you know, don't get me. You're not going to give me permission to shit talk Obama, are you? Because I will.
Please do. I have no sacred cows here. I mean, look, and again, I didn't vote for Obama in 16, or excuse me, or in 8 or 12. I couldn't. I voted Cynthia McKinney in 8, and I voted Jill Stein in 12.
Well, my first presidential election was 2004.
Okay.
So, I've been there. And, you know, the reality is I kind of started more as a liberal, but then, you know, through my 20s, going to law school was really a radicalizing moment for me.
It's a rare experience in law school.
I think it's because I'm not a sociopath. And so I would just be like, spendthrift trust. So the rich kid can just steal a bunch of people's money and then you can't touch this money. Why is this good for public policy? And it's just like, I would learn everything I would learn. What's a grat? You know, what the fuck is this? The way to avoid inheritance tax? That's totally bullshit. Like what? And as I would learn more and more things, you know, I ended up working in the securities arbitration clinic with people whose brokers stole money from them, and seeing how broken the arbitration system was in FINRA. And I would just be like, and then criminal law, and then you know, I just issue after I was just like, I don't want to do this. This is shit. Like, being a lawyer sucks. Like, there's no way to be a good person and be a lawyer. You know, I guess going and being a public defender, but then you know that you're not given enough resources and time to fully give people representation. So you're really operating as a necessary cog in the machine to give people the idea that there's some sort of process and it isn't just a rubber stamp to put poor people in prison. So for me, law school was a moment of just like utter despair, that I would look at other people who were very intelligent and they would just align themselves with it. And I went into politics instead to try to change it because I was like, this shit sucks. And I don't know, like, so I'm used to white mediocre people who are willing to do evil for money. It's very, very commonplace.
That's what makes Obama so interesting, right? Because he's not white, he's not mediocre, right? He's extraordinary in several really interesting ways. He's very smart, he's well-read, he's funny, he's articulate, he's handsome. And he has a thing or two to say about left-wing politics from an abstract, you know, I read it in a book kind of way. When he runs for president, you know, all bets are off. He becomes a very different person. But, you know, I don't know. Is this just what you have to do to run empire?
Gosh, you know, I hate to say that things are overdetermined because you know, fundamentally, some part of me is just this compatibilist, this person who believes that we have the ability to change things and that, you know, small individual actions can make big impacts, you know? So I think that Barack Obama had a blue sky above him for what he could have done, but he was not interested. I just don't think he was interested in marshaling a social movement for change. He wanted to basically be on billionaire yachts, you know? He wanted to be a streamer, you know? Like, he wanted a media job. He wanted to put together some money for generational wealth, you know? He wanted to be the friends of the bankers. He didn't want to fight the bankers. You know, he wanted to fill his pockets. It's tawdry and it's venal and it's embarrassing and it sucks because he fooled.
Is that a fair readable? Is that too cynical a read of Obama though? Again, I didn't vote for him.
I mean, he wants to be well thought of by people, and I think sometimes, you know, I mean, listen, like, I think of Obama as kind of like a political intelligence test for me. Like, how much do you buy into it? Because, you know, he really just, he came in there and he met with a bunch of bankers and he said, I'm between you and the pitchforks. And he built his policy around what was in their interest. And, you know, that's an intentional thing. And he's an intelligent guy, as you rightly say. He's read and he's aware of social democracy. He's aware of the alternatives. You know, he hired Larry Summers. He hired Rahm Emanuel. Like, this is, you know, it sucks. I wish he wasn't that guy. I wish he was the progressive guy we hoped he was. We voted him.
And I always knew that he wasn't. Back in 2008, I wrote a piece called Not My Brand of Hope when he was running, and I was explaining all the reasons why he simply was not a real progressive candidate. I think the thing that I wonder about him, and I guess it may not matter one way or the other, but is if he is the kind of bait and switch liberal or bait and switch leftist that a Fetterman is. Maybe not as extreme a case, but is he of that sort? Or is he somebody who simply has embraced a kind of pragmatic logic that says, look, somebody's going to run this empire, and I'm probably the most safe and humane and reasonable and smart person to do it. And that comes with lots of concessions that suck in every way. But at least if I'm here with, you know, at the helm, we won't have the kind of incompetence of Biden. We won't have the sort of extremism of Trump on the other end. We won't have a kind of immoral or amoral kind of position, that he values the right stuff. He's just willing to make all kinds of sacrifices and compromises to get outcomes under the premise of that's just how politics works. That's a generous read of Obama. I'm not saying that's my read of him, but that's a generous read of Obama.
I think with the way I look at Obama is, I guess I'm kind of I'm Scottish, right? That's my grandfather was an RAF pilot, shot down in 40 over the Bay of Biscay. And the thing is, we're just pugilistic. So the soft peddling of bullshit always rubs me the wrong way. And it was never really accepted in my family. It was always cut to the chase, be honest, go, tell us what your goals are and go after it with verve and energy and vigor. And I just feel like Barack Obama represents this kind of self-aggrandizement, where his decisions are never mistakes. They're always just, well, that's the best we could have done. And it's like, motherfucker, you had 60 senators. You had a 70 or 80 seat majority. I can't remember exactly how much it was. You had the you won Indiana, for fuck's sake. Okay. You had a mandate. Now, is it unrealistic to expect the New Deal? Probably it was unrealistic to expect the New Deal.
What did you want? When Obama, for those of some of my audience is too young to remember, but Jesus, 16 years ago.
Yeah. What did I want? Wow.
Was elected, he had a super majority.
I think the first time my stomach really sank was when I found out about his transition team and all the delusions. I was what we was called at the time an emo prog, which was basically a progressive who is sad and you're never happy. And Obama is playing three-dimensional chess. That's what we kept hearing. Obama's playing three-dimensional chess. He's taking 2 years to do Obamacare and negotiate with the Republicans, even though he has a supermajority, because it's really going to pay off in 2012. And yes, Paul Krugman was screaming from the tops of the mountains that the stimulus package was 30% of the size it should be. But Larry Summers said, no more than $1 trillion. And that was that. Okay. He had to have Larry Summers design the stimulus package. He had a Nobel Prize winning economist over here who's significantly to my right telling him it wasn't going to work and it was going to cause the recession to lengthen for 6 fucking years, which is exactly what happened. I just look at it the perfect example of this to really get in the weeds was the public option. Public option had, and this is according to some of the Podjohn guys and some reporting.
The public option was the public option in healthcare.
In healthcare, yes. Sorry for the shortcuts, but I've tried to be concise. I have a tendency not to be, but and some reporting. There's a really good book from Ryan Grimm called "We've Got People" that really gets into some of these various progressive fights over the years. If you want to learn how frustrating it's been to be a progressive or leftist for this long. They had 55 votes for a public option, and they just deleted it, and they ended up passing Obamacare with reconciliation anyway. With 50, they didn't even have 60 votes. They didn't have to care about the filibuster. They ended up passing what amounted to a massive giveaway to the pharmaceutical industry, and they got no Republican votes. And so Obamacare took multiple years to phase in. They got no Republican votes. They had no public option. They took 2 years to do it. They had a stimulus package that was way too small. And Barack Obama never raised the goddamn minimum wage in 8 years. The last president that ever raised the minimum wage, that signed his name to a minimum wage increase in this country, is George W. Bush. I want you to understand that. Feel that in your bones. This man he could have done more, okay? And he decided not to, and it resulted in him leaving office, handing the keys to Donald Trump. Now, I don't know what else you could say. The proof is in the pudding, man.
On the Obama point, that when he comes into office in 2008 and
2009 January,
technically fair enough. Yeah, he's elected in 2008. January 2009, he's inaugurated, and for the next 2 years. He has an opportunity to do all kinds of stuff with the supermajority. And this is the first kind of moment where Republicans weren't even pretending to play by the conventions of
Mitch McConnell met him and said, "My goal is to make you a one-term president."
One-term president,
and he didn't listen.
Right, well, because Obama's still in this. I firmly believe Obama had and it might be arrogance, it might be self-assuredness, it might be naivete, whatever. But he believed that he could persuade them. Obama would walk into negotiations and say, "Look, I want the number to be 0. They want the number to be 10." So he'd walk in and go 5, and they'd go 10, and he'd go, "Okay, 6." They'd go 10. He'd go 7, 10. And he just never. It took a while for him to accept that these people aren't arguing and negotiating in good faith. That's one thing. I think the other thing is, and I don't know what the answer to this is, but or what the solution could have been alternatively. But it seemed to me that Obama was holding on to political capital to get healthcare through. That he knew that would be his career legacy signature accomplishment.
Should have done a better bill then.
Agreed. But if he were to have fought for offshore drilling, if he were to have fought for a real significant public option in the healthcare plan itself, that there were moves he could have made with the supermajority, and even if he could have ramrodded stuff through it, and I think that the Blue Dog Democrats were never going to let that happen. But even if he could do that, it was going to compromise his ability to be reelected, because he's still somebody who's running against narratives, right? That he's a communist, that he's a socialist, that he has a secret Muslim Christian agenda to destroy America. Right? So he's still looking at being.
Well, thankfully, he didn't have to have any of that tried, because he was so moderate that they didn't try any of that.
Right.
They did it anyway. I mean, I think for me, listen, like, I'm not a sentimental person usually on this type of stuff. But I would say this: you got to be caught trying. And I don't think people give a shit about bipartisanship. They say they do in polls sometimes. Like, I like people to work together for the good of the country, because that's the kind of soft, laffy-taffy version of politics that is very uncommittal and non-confrontational. Who likes to be in a confrontation who isn't Scottish, right? Like, for me, confrontation is like, yeah, my blood's up, I'm alive. But for many of you, you're scared by that idea, which I understand. And, he didn't want to be the angry black man. I think America, honest to God, if I'm being honest, I think America was pissed off in 2009. They were mad at the bankers. 7 million people lost their homes. 40 million people lost their jobs. I think they were mad. I think they wanted someone who was going to do hope and change. And if he goes out there and he tries to do a bunch of change, and he tries to do a bunch of policies which are very good public policies that all the literature shows is good and gives back good outcomes, and it makes people's lives better, and they say fuck you Kenyan socialist, and they vote in Mitt Romney, well, okay, at least they have a bunch of policies that got passed.
Right. And John McCain the first time, which seemed like a more plausible outcome. I never thought Romney had a real shot, but I thought John McCain, with the right push, and with the economy collapsing at a moment where McCain says, I don't know much about the economy, didn't do him any favors. Right?
And like, honest to God, we have to let go of the idea of political plausibility as those are invisible handcuffs you're handcuffing yourself with. I argue for policies that are good, and it's my mission in life to convince you that they're possible. I'm not going to try to divine what you think is possible before I even come up with a bid. I'm going to tell you what I think is going to make your life better and how we can do it. And I'm going to ask you to join me. And I don't feel like Barack Obama wanted to take ownership of things, even though that ownership was given to him. Obamacare. He wanted to call it the Affordable Care Act, some sort of bland corporate insurance scheme to move the needle on a couple percentage points of uninsured. Why didn't he should have leaned into that and said, you're goddamn right. We're going to give everyone Obamacare. You're never going to have to worry about bankruptcy and medical care again. I'm going to take care of you. That's what you elected me to do. He could have been a man and stepped into that and leaned in, and maybe that wouldn't have worked. But so fucking what? He got reelected as a lame duck, did jack shit, got a pie in the face on the way out with an empty Supreme Court seat for 330 plus days,
That was disrespectful.
and handed the keys to Donald Trump. Who gives a fuck? What did he get reelected for? Nothing. So I guess I'm sorry for getting worked up.
No. I mean,
This is my life. And I remember all these arguments at the time and how frustrated I was that they were not going to work. He wasn't playing three-dimensional chess. He wasn't going to get the Republican fever to break. He wasn't going to do this. And it didn't happen. And none of the people who I argued with changed their mind and are now, going, you were right, Mike, back then. Now we need to listen to you. They say the same dumbass shit now that they said then when it failed. So I don't have any more, I guess, because I'm getting old. Sorry for raising my voice. This is just 20 years of effort of frustration that's coming out.
You are bereft of fucks. You have no fucks to give.
Yeah, I stopped caring about this kind of like mamby-pamby bullshit a long time ago. And I think most of the people are with me. I think most of the American people are with me. I just think we haven't had someone with the ruthless... it's like the Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders were the first one. You needed to see the nice guys get fucking humiliated and pantsed in front of the world over bullshit to realize that it's not because, these centrists have heard the arguments. They just are evil bastards, man. And you've got to beat them. And you need to get tough. And you need to be prepared to fight against AIPAC, to fight against these people are not going to ever, they don't give a shit about free speech or justice or anything. They care about power. Are you going to care about power, or are you going to let yourself be handcuffed over like these rules you've invented for yourself that they're not playing by? So that's kind of the way I'm at. That's my politics.
I got somebody writing in here who says, his name is Ben Mick. Shout out to you, Ben. He said, hi, I'm British, so I don't understand your politics. But if you hate Trump so much, why wouldn't you vote Biden? I just don't get it. We sort of covered this ground a little bit, but I think he's saying at the end of the day, and this is what a lot of voters are going to say, at the end of the day, everything you're saying is accurate, but we got fundamental choices here. And Democrats have done nothing to earn our votes. What if our life will be measurably better under one regime versus the other, even if both still suck, then we are doing ourselves a disservice to not support one of them. The reality of a two-party representative democracy is that somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and we got to pick one.
Okay, so my feeling is, okay, this you gotta make the lesser of two evils, which is basically the argument, right? 99% Hitler is better than 100% Hitler, and you've got to put your name next to 99% Hitler. My view of this is this: Joe Biden, I'm not in the ballot box right now. Neither are you. We have many months until Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whoever is the question before us. Right now, what that Joe Biden name represents is on debate. Is he the genocide Joe, or is he going to be ceasefire Joe? Is he going to support a public option and a $20 minimum wage and all these? What is the bid? I am arguing for a better bid. I'm arguing that Joe Biden changed the policies that make him unpopular and becomes more popular. I am not, and I'm passionate about these policies because I know what people's lives are going to be like when the good policies are passed versus the bad policies. I know, with all due respect to the British guy, more about the consequences of Donald Trump than you do. I will live them. Okay? I am trying to use what voice I have to pressure Joe Biden to be better. And if that means I have to threaten not to vote for him, I will. And I want that threat to be credible.
Here's the problem, Mike. There are many people, including Biden himself, who are banking on that. So when you say...
Oh, I'm not saying that I'll vote for him. Just to conclude, I will not vote for you if you're doing a genocide, bitch. So deal with it.
I believe you, but there are a lot of people who will talk just as heavy as you're talking, who will say, hey, look, I'm trying to force Biden to be better. I'm going to be the Frederick Douglass to his Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to, I'm going to make him be great because he won't be great on his own. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But they're banking on the fact that once November comes and you're walking in that booth, especially having already lived under Trump for 4 years, that the moment you have a chance to pull that lever, even if Biden hasn't earned the vote, you're going to say, yeah, I do want him to be better. Yeah, I wish he was better. Yeah, he's fucking shit. But there's two pieces of shit on the other side of this. And I care enough about the vulnerable, or I am one of the vulnerable, in such a way that I just can't allow Trump to be the victor. Not even on some like Democratic voters are responsible for holding the threads of American democracy together. Nothing like that. I mean, you should vote your conscience. People have to earn your vote. No one owes us a vote or owes us anything. We don't owe anybody anything until we elect them. But there is a way that at the end of the day, you're still going to say, look, if I vote this way, this is the outcome. If I vote that way, here's the other outcome. And I don't want a bad outcome. You know, I mean, Biden's banking on that. He's banking on the fact that you're not going to just hold the line. You're going to, at some point, you're going to get scared. You're going to say, you know what, fuck it, I can't do this. I can't.
Okay. I mean, just so everybody's clear, I'm going to hold the line. I'm serious as death. Now, he can think I'm bluffing. Try me. But let me just also say this.
Are most voters you, or are most voters?
Oh, no. Well, let me get into this. Like this is a really good question, because we're not really talking about my choice, right? Because I'm a former candidate. I'm an organizer. I've knocked tens of thousands of doors. I've raised millions of dollars. I've put my heart and soul into the things I believe in. Right. I've made mistakes. I've had failures. I've had embarrassments. You know, making the world better is the cause of my life. You're talking to somebody who's weird, bro.
Right.
Most people are not like me, which is fine. So let's talk about the people that are not like me. Let's talk about normal people. For them, voting is a sometimes thing. You know, there's an old saying, Democratic voters fall in love, Republican voters fall in line. If your strategy is to have the Democratic voters fall in line, you're going to lose. You're going to lose hard. There's a reason why we talk about Barack Obama so at length, because so many people have an emotional connection. They fell in love and they believed in something, and that's why he won big, because that's what it takes to win as a Democrat. You have to have people believe in you. Hillary Clinton tried the strategy you're talking about, and she ate shit. And Donald Trump is a lot stronger now than he was in 2016. Now, he's also got more weaknesses because, you know, there's people know what's at stake. But fundamentally, he's a better candidate now than he was in 2016, in my opinion. And the reason why is because he was literally getting knifed by the Republican Party the entire time. Like, there was a whole unendorsement shit, unendorsement thing that happened after the Access Hollywood stuff. There was a whole bunch of he didn't really have the Republican Party behind him fully. You know, they kind of just wanted to take their medicine. They wanted to keep the Trump voters on the team, and they didn't want to be caught. But, you know, he ended up winning. And he has had a project of taking over the Republican Party over the last 8 years, and he succeeded. So the Republican Party is behind him. The billionaires are behind him. You know, the Republican media is behind him. The Republican Party is marching in lockstep to the tune of Trump. And, you know, they hate Biden just as much as we hate Trump. So relying on that, you know, strategy, I don't think is a good one. I think if you want Democratic voters to vote for you, you have to give them something to believe in and want. And that's what's going to get regular people off the couch. Because a lot of regular people have other shit to do. Taking a nap, walking the dog. You know, voting is pretty low on many people's priority list. It's not like it is for me. It's not like it is for you. It's not like it is for the people in this chat. I'm talking about the people that make winners win. Is somebody who is like, you know, I heard that Barack Obama, he's pretty interesting. He's pretty, I hope he can help change. And I like that guy. And he really appeals to me. And he seems like a young guy. And he's an handsome guy. And I would like him as my president. That kind of conversation is not being had about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is... Oh, no. So do you see what I mean? Like, when you're talking about elections, you're really talking about people that don't resemble me. You're talking about people that may or may not vote. And so when I think about those people that may or may not vote, young people, marginalized people, I think we need to have a candidate that's a lot better and who is appealing to those people and is motivating people like me to go out and knock all those doors and drag all those people to the polls. That's what you need me for. You don't need me. If you just got my vote, you're fucking losing. You know what I mean? Like, I've donated tens of thousands of dollars in my life to candidates. I have knocked tens of thousands of doors. I have circulated petitions. I have done The dirtiest dirt, low field organizer work, all the way up to finance directors and all sorts of shit. If you're talking to me about your vote, you're already losing. I should be in your camp 100,000%. So, at the end of the day, though, I will say this. What I say about Joe Biden, and I'm not going to support a genocide, I mean that to my soul. And if that means that this country has to suffer consequences because Joe Biden would rather do a genocide than win, I'm willing to accept that. Just like when the Whig Party died, a lot of anti-slavery Whigs said, you got to vote for the Whigs because, sure, they're not an anti-slavery party, but the Democratic Party is a pro-slavery party. What you're talking about, this Republican Party, that's third-party bullshit. That'll never happen. And what ended up happening is the Whig Party died out because it would not take a position on what was relevant to the issues of the day. And a grassroots party rose up and the Whigs went the way of the dodo. And, that's how slavery got abolished. So, I don't know. I don't know if that ramble makes sense, but no, it totally that's how sense. I feel.
I want you to respond to this question from Ndungu Kamal. He says, the real issue is what is the left going to build to oppose the Democratic Party, and how will the left build it? I mean, going back to the Obama era, I mean, the Tea Party was a legitimate movement that certainly co-opted the Republican Party, certainly dragged them to the right on several key issues.
But they had a lot of money behind them too.
Absolutely. So that's the question. Like, how do you build the left-wing version of that? How do you build a left-wing opposition to the Democratic Party in period, in general?
If you want some hopium, in this past week, the UAW successfully organized the VW factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is the first time a foreign automaker and an automaker of the South successfully had a unionization. And the reason why that's happening is because the UAW was taken over by a group of Bernie Sanders and Democratic Socialists and left-wing trade unionists in a very close union election. And Sean Fain, in the tradition of Walter Reuther, who is a great civil rights icon and leader of the UAW, has rededicated the UAW to doing the work, plant by plant, factory by factory, going on offense, being aggressive, got that record-breaking contract at the Big Three, now successfully organized VW, is pushing to organize all the automakers in America and rebuild this movement so that it's not just tailing some internet personality or media personality or politician's single campaign that gets built for one race and then gets dismantled like Barack Obama's OFA, right? But about building an institution of real economic and labor power. Is that a slow process? Yes. But that's what I'm doing in the meantime. And obviously when the Democratic Party gives me opportunities, I'll take them. Vote for Summer Lee if you're in Pittsburgh. Follow the uncommitted campaign and do your work, I think Bernie Sanders was really is an opportunity to do a shortcut. And maybe in 2028, we'll have another opportunity to grab the helm.
I hope you're right. But before you go, I want to ask you one more question. And we've sort of talked about it, but I want to get your direct and clear answer. Should we fear a Trump presidency? Everything else aside, all the other candidates aside, should we fear a Trump presidency?
I think the answer to that is absolutely, and you're delusional if you think you shouldn't. I'm saying that, and the reason why I say that is, as weak and feckless and stupid as and pathetic the Democrats are, the Republicans are even more ruthless and evil. And we're in an uncomfortable situation where we don't have someone to support that's going to cause positive change. And the real question is whether there will be a rapid defeat or a slow defeat. And obviously slow defeat is preferable to rapid defeat. But you know what I prefer to both of those? Winning some things.
Right.
And, the question of whether is the reelection of Joe Biden a path to victory? Or is the election of Donald Trump a existential threat? And I do think that there's a non-zero chance that Donald Trump could do some really dangerous things And I think that his hold of the Republican Party is a lot stronger than it was in 2016 to 2020. And so he may have much more institutional backing than he did back then.
Oh, I think he does. I mean, for me, I think
that's what I'm scared about.
Yes, and that makes complete sense. I mean, I always say there's two kinds of people. People who want to change the country and people who want to run the country.
Yes.
And, you know, Trump isn't driven by an ideology. He's driven by a narcissistic desire to run the country and at best to advance his own economic interest, as narrowly defined as those can be. And so because Trump's not driven by an ideology, he's very easy to influence and to sway. You know, you get John Bolton next to him for 5 minutes, he'll want to blow up his, you know, a nursery school, you know, and he also at times is like, you know what, we're isolationist. You know, at times he's hands-on, at times he's hands-off. And there's no, to me, coherent, mappable set of political positions he takes that produces that kind of, you know, kind of platform. But rather, he doesn't give a shit. He does whatever works in that moment. He does whatever will get him.
He's a ruthless pragmatist.
Ruthless,
you could say a paleogenetic ultra-nationalist who uses pragmatic politics to increase his power. You
use much fewer words to say what I was just trying to say. I think that is absolutely correct. And so, based on that knowledge, rooted in that knowledge, in fact, it makes him scarier to me because he's less predictable. He's harder to sort of, you know, it's harder to determine what he's going to do because it's not like, okay, he's an imperial. Like, I've had lots of conversations, not lots. I've had conversations with John Bolton. I've studied John Bolton a lot, right?
Oh, God.
I know.
The stench of sulfur must have been intense.
Oh, my God. You have no idea. But there's a way that I know that whatever problem he sees or he confronts, he wants to respond with guns and bombs and violence, right? That's just who he is. And so I can easily trace his policy decisions. And if he were president, I could even more easily trace his policy choices based on his ideology that guides him. Because there's certain things he's not going to do. There are other things he's absolutely going to do. It's much more challenging to do that with Trump. And my worry is whatever advances his agenda in that moment will be the thing that he does. And because he has mastered the art of doing 180s, changing his mind completely, telling everybody to fuck off and continue to walk, right? He doesn't have a sense of accountability. You know what it is? He literally is shameless in the most literal sense. He has no shame. And because of that, and he has no moral compass, and he has no political sort of...
He's well suited to the time.
He is perfectly suited for the time, but it also makes him very, very scary because he'll do anything.
I think, you know, as a leftist, I will be one of the few people who says that I believe that Donald Trump really did want to do a coup on January 6th. He just didn't know how to do a coup. You know what I mean? Like, he was an incompetent. He wanted to do it, but he didn't have the ability to effectuate it, which is kind of wild to say about a president, but also makes sense if you know how our institutions operate.
Wow.
And I think the thing that scares me a bit is that it's not Donald Trump per se. And this is why I bring this up is I think it's actually the billionaire class in America has learned from Trump, and the Republican politicians have learned from Trump, and that fascism, they've become self-aware that there's really no rules, that they can do this. They can ban protests in Mississippi and nobody will do anything. They can, suppress the votes. They can ruthlessly gerrymander. They can just invent whatever logic they want at a Supreme Court. They can. There's not a constraint. There isn't. These liberal norms are really falling away for the Republican Party as a whole. And I mean liberal in the sense of respecting the minority and
political
political liberalism, pluralism, and tolerance, and a loyal opposition. I feel like those kind of beliefs are falling away towards a harder, more ruthless fascism. And we have this kind of development. I think what's going on in Gaza, this is why it's so important to me, because everything that's happening in Gaza will be brought home to people like you and me, man. Like these drones that have guns on them and just shoot people and targeting people with AI and all this stuff, this kind of techno-fascism is,
That's a great word.
Is coming for us, right? And it's just, that's what I worry about with Trump. It's not so much that I think Trump is especially dangerous. I think what he has done to our politics is already baked in. And, obviously I don't want him in power, but, and this is something that I've been hammering on the whole conversation, is we need a Republican Party that is defeated utterly by a Democratic Party that actually has a strategy of democratizing the system, thereby making it less vulnerable to somebody like Trump, right? And they're not pushing for that. They're not, I'll give you an example of some, we talked about, you got to vote for Biden because Trump's a fascist. Okay. Is the Democratic Party campaigning on the idea of ranked choice voting or some other voting system that prevents spoilers? Let me vote for Cornel West #1 and Cenk Uygur #2, and at the end of the day, I'll put a 4 over Biden and a 5 over Trump. Why don't you set up a system to give me every opportunity not to spoil the election? Why not redesign the system to make it more robust, to make it less vulnerable?
I think that's the right call.
They're not doing that, so I don't take them seriously.
Yeah. We get it, but they don't.
Why don't they get it? They're not stupid. They have Harvard graduates, they have people that took political philosophy.
They absolutely, but at the end of the day, it doesn't serve the ruling class's interests. It's really that simple.
The ruling class wants the Republican Party winning. And the Democratic Party is part of that ruling class. The elites of the Democratic Party. Joe Biden said this. You can go look it up. He said he was worried in 2020 that the Republicans would lose by too much because that would be bad for bipartisanship. Can you imagine a Republican saying that? Like, I don't want the Democrats to lose by too much. That'll be bad for bipartisanship.
After 4 years of Obama, or 8 years of Obama, I see why he would say that. I mean, he witnessed it up close. But you're right. The undergirding logic of it, the underlying logic of it is quite scary. And it speaks to a kind of fecklessness, a type of political cowardice, a lack of political imagination and ambition that the Democratic Party has, and I think they're going to pay the price for it in November. I don't.
I just hope that they just change their policies so that I can. As I said at the beginning, I said I'm easy to please. It may not seem that way with how fiery I got tonight and how much knowledge and anger I have. These are many thousands of hours of effort.
Look, and working, and you're frustrated by what you've seen, and I get it. I have no issue with your frustration, and I share your frustration. I'm not sure if I'm in this. I don't know. I don't know where I am in terms of voting in November. I just don't know. I mean,
let's just work to make Biden better. He would. They did that in 20. This was wild for me. Not to interrupt you, but I just want to say this. They did this in 2020. They went through a whole rigmarole. They did the whole Bernie Biden, committee, and they put together, some policies. They didn't end up pursuing any of them, but he promised to do a public option. He promised to pass a minimum wage. He promised to pass the Equality Act to protect transgender and queer people. He promised to codify Roe v. Wade. He's not even bothering to do any of that. I mean, I guess because we won't get fooled again, but at least lie to me. At least lie to me.
At least lie to me. I think that's where a lot of us are. Like, look, we think all politicians are bullshit. We think they're all full of shit. Just at least pretend to be on my side. At least Fetterman me. Don't Trump me. Fetterman me. But the difference is the Fettermans of the world, they sell so hard, and then the moment they get in, it's over, right? They start pivoting. I need somebody who's somewhere, maybe actually a little in the middle, where they're not.
That's the JB Pritzkers. I feel like JB Pritzker has done that a little bit in Illinois. I'm not from Illinois, so maybe Illinois boys would know better if I'm falling for bullshit, but.
You might be. I feel like you're gonna be on a really angry rant about Pritzker in like 6 months or a year. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, what? I can't believe I trusted this piece of shit.
Oh no, I don't trust anybody. I'm just, I just, I'm very pragmatic. It's funny because a lot of people will say like, oh, you're a Bernie or Buster, or you're you're so hard. And it's like, no, I just want somebody who wants to win, motherfucker, and can explain how they're going to accomplish their goals, right? Like right now, the Democratic Party is united in their defense of the filibuster, which means no laws will ever get passed. How can you possibly be serious and be supporting? And it's already an anti-democratic institution in the Senate. California has as many senators as Wyoming. And then on top of that, you're going to make it so you have to have 60?
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Come on.
Fair enough.
Let's be serious.
Like, we got to run because we got to do our Gaza update, but I want to thank you for hanging out with me. You got to come back. We got to do this again. Seriously.
Yeah, you can come on my show next.
Whenever you want. You send me a note, I'm there.
All right. If you want, can I do a plug before you go?
I would need you to do a plug. Tell people what you're up to, where to find you, all the stuff.
All right. So I'm really bad at this whole marketing thing. I'm Mike from PA on Twitter, which I really just use as my intellectual venting. But my real show is at Central_Committee on twitch.tv/Central_Committee. I am the early morning streamer. So if you need a live content early in the morning from 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, all the way to noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, that's where I'm at. 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And, you can listen to me while you're in the office or working. Actually, a leftist who wakes up in the morning. So come join me.
Yo, y'all got to check this out, man. I really, really, really enjoy. I don't plug stuff that I don't enjoy. Twitch.tv Central_Committee. Go there, check them out daily, Monday to Friday. It's definitely worth it. Also, follow him on social media to get all the insights, all the thoughts, and all the links and stuff that he's up to. Mike, my friend, so good to talk to you, bro.
Thanks for having me on. I hope you enjoyed it, everybody. I threw my links in the chat. So
awesome. Everybody,
you can hit that follow button too.
Yes, please hit the follow button. Follow him on everywhere. And for folk out there who are watching from my end, if you are watching Night School for the first time, if you are a member of the Central Committee crew, if you're part of his fan base, you're part of his audience, part of his cult, and I mean that in the lovingest way possible because it's dope what they do. I'm becoming a member of the cult myself. Welcome to Night School. Make sure you hang out with us again. Hit the like button if you can. Hit the subscribe button so we can widen our base a little bit. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit the join button. When you hit the join button, you allow yourself to become a monthly subscriber to the channel. It allows us to expand our programming. It allows us to extend our reach. It allows us to build a studio. It allows us to hire more staff and personnel to cut these videos, to produce new content, and to do Night School every single Monday to Friday, along with office hours on the weekend. This is where we want to be, but we need your support, and I appreciate when you want to give it. And if for some reason you decide that you don't want to give money to YouTube, which we all understand, you can sidestep the corporate monster by going straight to Cash App, straight to Venmo, and sending it directly to us where we get to keep all of the funds. You go to Cash App, $MLHTV, or you go Venmo at MLHTV. And in both cases, the money goes directly to us to build studio space, to extend our programming options, and to pay our staff who makes all this awesomeness happen every single day. All right, family, stay with us. Up next on the channel, we're going to do the Israel's war on Gaza day 199 update. We'll see you in